Let's continue with what kind of gear that we use here at Austin Community College for our lighting classes, both for TV tech, lighting, basically any class that you want to have quality picture to help you get your story done. So now we're going to start to get to the nitty-gritty. We're going to start seeing what lights are used and what equipment that supports the lights are used to tell your story. We'll start with tungsten. Tungsten halogen lights have been a standard for film lighting for over 100 years. Many people think they're being phased out and they're just old school. Sometimes old isn't bad. They happen to give a very warm feeling to a light, and the way that they're constructed, without getting into the hundreds and hundreds of pages of physics involved, is that they do tend to react to the skin tones a little bit more on an organic side, a little bit more filmy than the new LED lights and the other technology that's coming out there. We call them tungsten halogen quartz lights because tungsten is the metal that when it's warmed up and fired up gives a warm color, a orangey color. They're in a halogen gas inside a quartz envelope of the bulb itself. So we're going to think about, why is it called warm? From your readings, you understand about the visible light spectrum, which are all the colors of the rainbow that the human eye can see. But of course, there's other waves of electrical energy and particles on both sides of that. It goes from infrared to red to orange to yellow to green into the blues and violets, and then ultraviolet, and then white that we see as white. In the middle is green. On the lower Kelvin temperature is the 3200, which is tungsten. In the higher range of the visible light spectrum is sunlight or HMI lights, which create that, or LEDs set at cool. Those are in the 5600 Kelvin. 5600 Kelvin is a higher temperature as far as the Kelvin degree goes, and we tend to call it a cool light. It's a high temperature, but we call it cool because the cool feeling of nighttime or something that's very cold is actually a high Kelvin temperature. Whereas tungsten lights, or lights that are set to the lower range on the Kelvin scale, are warmer lights. They're more orangey. You might have the feeling of a fireplace or the feeling of an indoor light. Those technically are in lower color temperatures, but we call them warm because of the feel. So sometimes in lighting, you're going to get what seems to be contradictory, but you have to think about, in how are you talking about a light? Are you talking about its emotional feel, or are you talking about its technical aspects? Okay? So let's start with the most well-known company in lighting. We have Richardson and we have Arri. These have both been around for a long time. When I first started classes here, the only lights we had for our production companies were these tungsten halogen lights by Richardson. Recently, we've gotten the Arri lights. Both companies make a variety of lights besides tungsten. They make LED lights, they make HMI lights, they make fluorescent lights. So don't worry about saying, if I'm just using a Richardson light. No, tend to talk in the terms of what is the light made out of, what color temperature can it do, how is it built, because that's going to matter in how the light is being projected for it and how it can be controlled. Let's start with Richardson. These are cases that they travel in. They're heavy-duty cases with wheels on one end. They have a handle on the other. I've taken it, rolled it into position, and dropped it down. They have really heavy-duty clamps on them. I've undone all of them except one over here to show you how this is done. So I'm going to reach down this little butterfly, I call it the butterfly wing. It kind of flips up. You turn it, and it raises this piece up so that you can then take it off of its clamp and bring it down. And normally there's two. Sometimes some cases have them on the other sides too. A good A good protocol for us is once we've taken a light out of a case, we keep it closed and only put on one latch. And that's so if we lift it up and drag it very quickly, the pieces won't all fall out. But it also tells everybody on the set that something's been taken out of that kit. It becomes very helpful. So let's open up the Mole Richardson kit and see what we have inside. This is a little space back here that we can put diffusions and other things that if we need to. Most people never even know about that or open it. This light kit has 4 different lights. All of them are tungsten halogen. 3 of the lights are one construction, 1 of the lights is another. This kit holds the stands, the lights themselves, the barn doors, which are controlling pieces of metal with flaps that we can put on the front that can control where we want to cut off some of the light and where we don't want to. It also has controllers of intensity that we can put in. We're going to get to those when we start talking about controlling intensity. Those are called Scrims. And for final, we have the Gaffer bag. This is a bag that we throw in this kit. Sometimes you just might check out a kit or bring one of your own. But the Gaffer bag for our class has extra sets of gloves. We keep 4 sets of gloves. So if 4 students are operating a light, they'd be nice and safe. I'm going to put these right down here. There's our 4th little piece. Another one. This is like they're breeding inside there. And then we have C47. The most important tool in a grip gaffer bag. Hey, it's a clothespin, a wooden clothespin. You don't want to get the plastic ones because they're used to hold gels onto our lights in specific places. You can use them to hold up a piece of clothing behind. We use these to hold cables sometimes in a little bit of weight. They're really helpful. There's a lot of stories behind why it's called the C47. One of them is that if you were sending in your budget for your department and your financial people looked and saw that you wanted 2 dozen of clothespins, they're like, what are you doing, laundry? You're not getting these. But if you give them a technical number, like C47, oh, they must be needed. That's one of the myths of that. The other myth is there was a big barrel with 47 dozen of these in the barrel. Go get me some C47s. So you would go to the barrel, get those C47s out. When we turn them around, it's called the C74. These are really good to be using as little tiny pliers when we take a scrim or something out of something hot. It's really good to be able to hold that. So C47s, they're in our gaffer bag. Let's take that bag out and put it here. Here we have our Mole Richardson kit. This is called the Mickey Tweeny Betweeny kit. That's actually the names of the lights that Mole Richardson calls in them, so you know what's in this kit. Let's take a look at what the different pieces are in here. We're going to start with the stands. We have 4 stands that are in the back and they can come out. We're going to be opening those up and folding those out. They all go in a specific way. We have 4 lights. We have our open face light, the Mickey, which is 1,000 watts of light. We have the tweeny light. We have 2 of these, 2 tweenies. They have 650 watts of light. And where's our 4th light? Let's take a look. This is a big barn door. That's for that big light over there. This is the scrim bag for that big light over there. There's our light. This is the betweeny. This one is 300 watts of light. Wait a minute. I have 4 lights One's 1,000, two are 650, one's 300. But why is that called the betweenie and that's called the tweenie? I know why. Because Mole Richardson actually makes a whole bunch of other smaller lights than that called the teenies and the teeny weenies. I didn't name them. That's just the names of these guys. So this light goes between the betweenie and the teeny weenie. So mystery solved. We talked about scrims, which we'll look into when we talk about controlling intensity. The barn doors, we're going to learn how to put them on. In this little final pocket, 2 more scrim bags for some of the lights, and the barn doors for the other 3 lights, and a collar, because there's 2 pieces of the big light that have to go on there. These all fit in exactly, mostly in one way. In your blackboard, there's a picture of all of these lights, and there's a picture how this kit goes back together. Let's take a look at the Arri just to see what lights they have in there, and then we'll start putting all the lights together and talking about the different lights. So this is the Arri kit. Arri is from Germany, Mo Richardson's from Hollywood. Open up their kit's a little bit different. Again, they have some of the pockets back here that you can put the pieces in. Their stands are black, a little bit different. This kit has 2 150-watt lights that fit in this pocket. 1 300-watt light, that's its barn doors. 1 650-watt light, and 1 1,000-watt light that looks a little bit different, but actually acts just like the Mickey. Their scrims for this, we keep hidden back in here in little bags. They too have some scrims. Okay, let's get started putting these together. I'm going to start with the Mole Richardson line. I'm going to start with the 3 lights that are the same construction. These are called Fresnel lights. Then we'll bring out the Mickey and put that together. We're going to build them, show you how to build them as you would be on a set. The first time I arrive on a set, I've got my call sheet that tells me where I'm going to be going. When I arrive on set, I look for one of 2 people, the locations manager or the assistant director, because they have scouted, they have set where they're going to be, and they have a better knowledge sometimes than me of what we're shooting that day and where we're going to be setting our cameras up. So if I know that I'm going to be shooting right in this direction and only here and over here for the day, I can decide where I want to put my equipment. It's a really good idea to know efficiently where you're going to put your equipment. I'll have a discussion with my director of photography who tell me the general ideas of which equipment I'm going to be using. I want to get my equipment, I want to pull it out, I want to get it set up in a staged position. I want to get it set up in my storage area, get everything on that light ready to go, and then bring the whole unit onto the set. I don't want to bring a light stand onto a set, then go back, have to get the light, put the light on. That's extremely inefficient, and I want to set up all the lights that I might be using, even if my first shot only calls for 1 light. If we change our mind, or all of a sudden we find out in that shot that an actor is getting up from a chair and moving, we may have to light other parts of the set. Instantly, I got to be able to go and get a light that's ready. We can't stop production for me to go and construct a light. Let's get our jobs done ahead of time. And I'm going to get it nice and neat and get them all stacked up in a safe manner so that everybody can see all the gear and maybe not trip over it. I don't lie my stands down on the ground. I don't do anything like that. Okay? Let's start with a stand. I'm going to bring out a stand. A little noisy. So here's the stand. It collapsible legs. This has 3 risers on it. So I loosen this up and I can raise my lights a specific height. These tighten up. I tend to call these knuckles. So I can get this light to go up pretty high. So I have 3 extension risers. Then I have 2 more knuckles or 2 more knobs. One at the top around a collar that holds all the legs, and one at the bottom of the collar that holds all the legs. I'm going to keep this one locked, and I'll show you why I don't play with that one. I'm going to open my stand by turning my handle, and I'm not going to turn it a bunch. I don't need the handle to be falling off. I only need to open it enough. Then I'm going to rotate my stand and hold it out, and I'm going to just open those legs up a little bit just so they don't get stuck. I'm going to hold on to my stand, and I'm going to push down on my legs, and they're going to open up. Then I'm going to place it on the ground, and I'm going to raise it up to a specific height. I'm going to raise it up enough so I could get my toe underneath it. Because if I was moving this along the set, I'd be able to lift one leg over the cable, move it, lift another leg and another leg, and this centerpiece would not be down and dragging a cable along with it. It's just kind of a smart thing. The other reason is like, look at me, I'm bent over with this light. My back can start to hurt if I'm moving a lot, but if I had my light up here and I wanted to move my light very quickly, I could just put my foot underneath it if it's not too heavy of a light and just bunny hop my light to where I need to go to get it over a cable or anything else. So that's a little quick tip that a lot of us tend to do. When I set a light up, I want to set it up in a staged position. I want to set the light up so I can work on it, not hurt my back bending over on it all the time, and put all the pieces on and get everything in the controls ready. But then what I'm not doing is I'm not having it so high it could tip over if I walked away. I put it at a good height. I get it at a height where most people can see it as they're walking past it, and then I'll put all of my lights together. And then if I'm going to be away from these lights, I will put sandbags on them. I'm not worried about them falling over because I'm going to balance them correctly. I'm worried about someone tripping and knocking them over. You always want to be aware that there's a lot of people on set. It's dark, everybody's in a hurry, so you want to be able to take care of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm going to balance my light. Just like we balance a camera, I'm going to use one leg in front of where I'm going to put my lens. So I'm going to put my light on here, and this is going to be my lens. So if my weight of my light goes here and I push forward, it's not going to tip backward. If I put my light this way and it was heavy, it could easily tip forward, even if I had a lot of sandbags on the back of the leg. So I'm going to make sure I do that. Now, if I already have my light on it, it might be hard to pick it up and turn it around. What I could do is just hold my light in position, turn one of the collars if it's not raised, and just spin it. Remember I told you that we're not going to use this knuckle down here. Remember when I did discuss that we tend to have these risers? I usually line them all up so I can get them all on the same side. But we have this post that goes all the way down the collar, and that's what I opened to bring this leg up and down. We didn't touch this knuckle. There's a reason. If I was to undo this one, then undo that one, now the post can move up and down. So maybe you wouldn't want your stand like that sticking on the ground because it could get really wobbly. However, if I'm out in the sand or in the dirt, I might want to put that down into the dirt. But most of the time, you want to have this one locked. You want to have this pole, because this pole now can move up and down this, and I don't want that to happen too many times. Mostly on a set, I don't need that. So we usually tend to keep that one locked. And once again, it's kind of wobbly. I'm going to push down on my collar just to open up my legs enough, and then bring them out so I can put my toe underneath it. I don't want them too high. That really is unbalanced. It's really not a great way to put your light. Sometimes you have to in a corner though. So really it depends on the situation. Normal way, it's kind of spread out, enough height to put 1 foot under, and you're good to go. So again, I'm only going to take the top knuckle, push it down, put my foot under it, lock it. Light's going to go balanced. Now we're ready to go. I'm going to put 2 stands up, and then I'm going to bring out 2 different Fresnel lights of 2 different sizes and put them on for us. Second stand should only take you a couple of seconds. Open it up. Sometimes it sticks, so you just have to pull on it, push it down. There you go. Ready to go. We're going to start with the 650 watt light. When it's stored with the lens down, the cable coiled over the top, and the yoke is loose. So if this case banged around a little bit, the light could move without getting hurt. So I'm going to hold this light up. This is the Mole Richardson Tweenie 650 watt tungsten light. What I like about Mole Richardson is they actually put the name on the back. They put a bunch of other information too, like how many different lamps you can put in it for different wattages. The maximum wattage this one takes is 650 watts. Also tells you how many amps that pulls. This is 650 watts. I'm going to take my light and take my cable off of it and let that drop to the ground. This is 650 watts. So your average household lamp is 100 watts. So this is 6 times that brightness, which is very helpful. Notice it's making a noise a little bit. I'm going to turn this around. First of all, I'm going to tighten the yoke. The yoke is what I can tilt my light with and what I pan it. So I'm going to lock my tilt on this, and I'm going to place it on my stand. This is a knuckle. I'm going to bring that back out because I want to make sure that that screw isn't going all the way into this hole here. I want to make sure that that screw is not there. So I'm going to put it onto my light, and I'm going to lock it down. This is how I pan my light then, with this lockdown of the yoke. So the noise that you were hearing was the lens of this light. So the lens is a Fresnel lens. It concentrates the light in a specific mathematical manner. So the beams of light that go out, whichever the diameter of the lights are going out on that, are going to be going pretty much in straight lines, and they're going to be nice and pure. You're not going to get some color edges, and it's going to be a nice crisp line. This was created by a Frenchman called Henri Fresnel. And there's a lot of stories about him. You can look it up and see what he's doing about that. But this is the front of my light. These are little wedges that can hold my barn doors. It can hold Scrims. It can hold gel if I needed to do that. And there's a front knob on the front and back of this. And this controls my light inside can move forward and backwards. We're going to be showing and demonstrating that once I have these lights up. As we said before, this is a tungsten halogen quartz light. So its light is created by wattage coming through and hitting a bulb. That is quartz light that has halogen gas, and it's a tungsten metal inside there. So when it heats up, it gives out the color temperature of tungsten and gives us that warm kind of light. When I move this knob at the front or the back, it moves the light itself and its little reflector forward and backward. That's going to change how that light's coming through. And we're going to discuss how that changes both intensity of the light and the quality of the light when we start talking about the theory of how light works. This is how I change the lamp. This is a little spring piece right on the side here. I pull that down, I bring my light in, and I close it. This is set at a height so I can work on it because next thing I do is I'm going to put some barn doors on this to control it. This little brackets here, it springs up, and I'm going to put a barn door on it so I can control the light. So I'm going to go grab one of those. So this is a barn door, and this is its safety chain. The barn doors control some of the light coming out, so where the beams go where you don't want to. There's big barn doors, little barn doors. It's put onto these brackets with these flanges. This is a foldable area that's going to fit into here. When I start and put these on, I have to have the barn doors closed for this light because this edge here sticks out a little bit beyond its surface and it gets caught in here. So I always close my barn doors before I put it in. I'm going to turn this sideways a little bit so you can actually see me putting this down. Turn my light sideways. Okay, so I'm going to do this from the side because I want to be able to see this flange as I hit all these 3 bottom points. This one's going to be lifted up as I do it. It's really easy to put barn doors on when it's cold. When it's hot, it gets really tough. That's where I might take a C47, and use that to hold this up. So I'm going to take this flange here, I'm going to line up and look straight down the side of it. My barn doors are closed. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to start from the top and lower it and catch the 2 side flanges. And then as I bring it down, I want to make sure that it catches only on this bent circle part, and I can freely move my barn doors. Then I bring this down and grab it. So if I was to rotate this back and open and then lock my pan, open this up, that you see I'm not seeing any part of the brackets, and then I can rotate my light correctly. If you do it wrong, and you will always do it wrong, when there's a lot of people looking and waiting for you to get it done on a set, because that's just the way it works. If I was to do it wrong, I tend to not do it wrong, so it's might be kind of difficult for me. Yes, let me check that. Yeah, I did it wrong. Okay. So if I put it on wrong, it might have some difficulty turning. I also can't get this top piece to come down and grab. This has been bent a lot, because sometimes people just take a wrench when it's not working and bend it out to work, because they haven't realized in their hurry that when they've put it on, they grabbed the bottom of the whole frame instead of the flange. Now it's not going to move. It'll accidentally come off. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to put my barn doors up. Just going to lift it a little bit, and I'm going to grab the front, and there I am. I leave the barn doors a little bit open because if I walk away from this light and someone tries to help me out and plugs this light in and turns it on, if these barn doors are closed, the heat has nowhere to go, and it could start a fire. So good practice is to always leave these barn doors a little bit open. Not fully wide, because in the dark, someone could come back and catch themselves on that. So you just want to make sure that you open your barn doors a little bit longer. Notice, I'm going to spin it this way now. Notice I have this chain on here. This chain is to keep the barn doors from falling off, specifically if you have it really high on a stand or if you're above somebody. You want to kind of make sure that's safe. It's on one side, and remember, our side can rotate around, so I can put it on either side of it. What I like to do is just put it around the yoke and take the S-hook and grab the chain pretty close to the barn door. It has room to move around, so if this light was to rotate around, it still has some room to go. That should be fine for it. What I don't want to do is take this and chain it way up here. That doesn't help, because if I wanted to tilt it, I'd be caught. It's like putting the leash on your dog a little too close. So you want to make sure that your chain is here. You can hear that moving around. Not all lights have these chains on them, but if they're on them, it's a good idea to use them. Okay, so I'm going to turn this light around back and on this side. On this side of the light, you're going to have the handle. Remember, that's the tilt handle. And then right below that is what we call a button. It's a protrusion of metal with a groove on it. And right below that is a rope with a little loop on it. This is the cable holder. And what we do when we have a light in stage position is we gather all the cable and hang it off here so we can move it. And so we're not dragging this cable along the whole set. Once we go to raise the light, we drop the cable to do that. So if we follow the cable down, cable's here on the back, we follow it down, and there's our light switch. We want to make sure that light switch is off when we're getting this ready. And I'm going to now start coiling this cable. And I'm going to do over under, just about this big, about the size of the light is a good way to do it. It's not too big, it's not too little. I'm going to use the same practice that I use when I'm coiling my media cables or my audio cables, is I do the over under so that if I was to pull this out, it would pull out without making a knot, and it doesn't kink my cables. This has an Edison plug on it, a regular light plug with a ground on it. I'm going to take my cable, pass my rope through it, put it up, get that hanging here. The light's almost ready to go. One thing I know I want to have is on standby is a sandbag. When I get it to set, I might bring along a sandbag for it. But one of the last things I want to do is the controlling scrims, if they're available for this. Scrims are pieces of metal, and we're going to be going through that when we start working about intensity, that slip inside the light. I'm going to get the scrims out and hold them up for you and then show you where they go, but we're going to have a whole little section on how scrims work and how to put them in the light. I'm just going to go grab those scrims right now. This is the bag of scrims. There's 2 for 3 lights in here. The great thing about this light and the next dies below it for the Richardson is that the brackets here fit all of this same scrim. So I can use this scrim for the tweenie and the betweenie. So it opens up with Velcro. Let's hear that Velcro sound. Pretty cool. So inside of my scrims are pieces of metal screening that are specific size, and they're color coded by the industry to do specific jobs. When we do our light intensities, we're going to be using these to change all of the light's intensity or parts of the light's intensity. But there's different colors. When I lift up this flap here and push down my top, we're going to go through the demonstration of that. We can put our scrims in. And I want to keep them handy though, and I don't want them on the ground. So I'm going to put them back in my bag, and I'm going to take this and I'm just going to hang it on my light when I go to move it over. On set, I might pick another riser that's closer. If this light raises up, I don't want to have the scrims up above me. I might put it down on this piece down here once I have the light been set. So my light's all together. I'm going to stand it over a leg so it doesn't fall forward, and I consider that staged and safe to go. When I set up all my lights, I want to put them all together in the same area. So we've done a tweenie. There's 2 of these in the kit. We're going to take out the betweenie and do that. And after that, we'll do the Richardson Mickey. Here's my stand. I'm going to go ahead and save my back, get it to a height for me. So for me, the height is right around my sternum is a good place to put it, because then I can put a light and I can look down and work on it. I'm going to go over and get ahead of the game. I'm going to go back over here. Going to grab the barn doors. Going to grab a scrim bag. And I'm going to grab the light. So here's my light. 2 pieces down that I don't need right now. Again, this is a Fresnel light. It's put away with its yoke going up and down. The cable is coiled over the top of it. I'm going to let that drop to the ground for a minute. This is the bracket. Now these brackets are the same width as those brackets over there. So the same barn doors for the 2 different lights fit in the same ones. I find that very efficient in the dark. I'm going to start by locking my yoke. I'm going to make sure that my screw of my pan is backed out so it's not in. Sometimes when I put these away, I might put these all the way in so they don't get lost in the kit. but I want to make sure, I usually put my finger in there so I can do that. Because if it's a big heavy light, like 300-pound light, it's really hard to flip it up and look at it. So I tend to use my finger to take a look at that. So I'm going to go through the same procedure. I'm going to mount it on my light, get it set. You want to make sure it's going all the way down the hole. If this is locked in, if I had that pin in, it would be hitting it. If I had this pin a little too far in, it'd be sitting on the top. It wouldn't be seated down below, and that could just fall off the light. So I want to make sure that my knuckle is backed out enough, and I'm holding onto the light, because once it gets right, it wants to fall down. So there it is. It's falling down, and now I'm going to tighten up my pan, so I don't have to chase my light when I'm putting my other pieces around it. I'm going to set my light straight. I'm going to reach down and grab my barn doors now. Here are my barn doors, same size as that one. I'm going to get the chain out of the way. Working from the side, I'm going to lift up. Going to make sure it's grabbing the flanges, bring it down, put the top on, put my chain on. Open my barn doors. Turn the light over a leg, grab my cables, do a quick over-under. Put it through my rope. I don't have a button on this one. This one doesn't have the button. So I'm just going to use the handle of the tilt to do that. Last, I pick up my scrim bag. I make sure that I have all the pieces of my scrim bag in here. I am missing one. Aha, I'd want to make sure that I have that, so I might have to go back and try to find the other one. I'd make a note of that, or I'd yell to the best boy who's on the truck making sure everything's there. I'd say, go for Laura, and Laura would go, yes, and go, this is Sam, missing a tweeny full red. Goes, okay, it's on its way. Because you don't want to go to set and not have what you need. So I'm going to put this over here. Now this is a little crowded when you're doing here, so I'm just going to reach down and put this down here. This is ready to go. So we have the 650 watt light, the 300 watt light. Now I'm going to build the Mickey right over here. It's the Mickey, much bigger light. I'm going to drop, I might as well take the cable. It's already here. Take the cable and put it on the button. Ready to go. Lock my yoke. Make sure that this screw isn't all the way in here so it can go on. Going to raise my light. Now I'm going to put the barn doors on it. This one has a different spot and flood, and we're going to see how that works. It works a little bit different. This is an open face light. There's no glass on it. Instead, there's a little screen protecting in case the light breaks. I'm going to tilt this a little bit sides to see, maybe you can see this, what happens when I spot and flood this one. In this one, the bulb is straight across. There's no reflector attached to it. As I spot and flood, the reflector itself moves back and forth. Makes a cool noise too. We're going to see how that actually works what that does to the light beam as we work on it. I'm going to turn this a little sideways so you can see me mounting the two pieces that go on this. Scrim bag for this. Check to see it has all its pieces. I see it has all its pieces. So before I leave my equipment area, I make sure everything's in it. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Put that on a handle down here. I've made sure that my light switch is off. I'm going to grab two pieces to the barn door. Barn door on this one doesn't have circle bends. It has it has a little square of 4 bends. This is going to end up going on this collar. this collar fits on the light first. This collar can be confusing to a lot of people. There's a lot of parts to it. There's a bracket that's short, brackets that are long, a mobile piece here that turns, and a brass piece that turns up here. This is the bottom of the bracket, and it turns like this. The long brackets hold the barn doors and scrims. The short bracket attaches to the light. So this is actually backwards. We're going to turn it around. This is the bottom. This will turn and hold this on here once we have it on. So I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to bring this over, line it up, bring it down. It sets. It can now move. This brass piece is folded, and then it has a screw to it. This fold is actually a spring. It goes along here, and it's just supposed to sit against the bottom. It's not supposed to go around and grab the bottom of it. That's why we get these back and they're bent out a little bit. It's just meant to sit here. As this light heats up, this spring will expand, and this won't be so noisy as it is. It'll hold on better, but you'll still be able to turn it. Now, if we go to the top, all the way up to here, we're going to see another piece. This piece has a screw with a little lever, sort of, that opens up and hands down. We get this out of the way, and we take our barn doors. Here's our barn doors with the squares. We line that up down the edge. And we bring it down and we make sure it grabs the bottom lip. It's hard to do, again, it's easier for me to do it looking at the side. So as I put this on, I'm going to make sure that I'm grabbing this part and this part and this part. My barn doors are closed. I'm going to grab bracket, bring it straight down, grab the bottom edge. Then I bring this big piece around and I close it down. If I open my barn doors again, I see that my bracket's correctly, that it's grabbing the back end and not the front end. I can rotate everything very nicely, so it's ready to go. So all three lights are built, ready to go to the set. All they need is a sandbag when we move them forward. The reason the barn doors rotate is sometimes you want to cut off some of the light on the floor or the ceiling. You don't want it to hit a person, but you want the lights to go out wide. So this covers a little bit bigger area. Other times you might want to be closing walls around somebody, and so you might close the two sides instead. What you want to avoid is really closing these barn doors, because this is really close to the lens. It'll heat up, and you'll actually see these starting to smoke, as we call that. It really gets kind of crazy to be able to do that. These barn doors can be opened or closed. We put gels and diffusions on the outsides of these rather than near the lamp, because then they don't burn so much. We use C47s to do that. Now that I have all these three built, I'm going to move them over here and get them nice and efficiently stacked up and ready to go. And then I'm going to move my Arris out and set them up in front of us. So I'm going to close my doors just a little bit. I'm going to pick my light up and put my biggest light here. And put it one leg over the other so I can pull it out and I don't get it caught underneath. Finally, I'll take this light, put it over a leg. This is called soldiering your lights. They're all lined up like a little soldier. One leg is over a leg of the other one. You can pick it up and just drag it and lift it to set. So that's a really nice way of setting all those up. I'll usually set all four lights up, but for our purposes right now, I'm just doing the three. So I'm doing the biggest wattage, 1,000 watts. This is the smallest watts, 300 watts, and a 650. Okay, next I'm going to go over and work with the Arri lights and start setting them up in the same area. Arri lights has 4 stands for 5 lights. The last light that comes in comes with a clamp. I'm going to start and come over here first, much lighter than the other stands. But the same principles. This only has 2 risers on it instead of 3. So this goes a little bit less height than the other one. Going to just open up the top one again, the collar, push down. It spreads out a little wider though, so it takes up a little bit more territory than the others. Let's start with the biggest light. We're going to start with, like the Mickey, 650 watt light. It's just configured a little bit different. And its barn doors are going to go on a little bit differently. It already has its collar built onto it, so we don't have to take that off. But I'm going to do the same procedure by dropping my cable out of the way so I can work on it. It's put away with its collar. Instead of a full collar though, this one only has 1 bracket that holds the light. And it's built so I could mount the light off the side of my stand or mount the light over my stand. I'm going to do over, I'm going to go straight down. So I'm going to lock, make sure this is unlocked a little bit, come over, put my light on. Okay, make sure it goes all the way down. There we go. Do that same little tighten piece. Okay. And this collar moves around a little bit differently. It's also noisy. Instead of a little spring that you lift up, this picks up and locks down. I kind of like that. Also has the ability, you can actually put a pin in this to lock this in position as you're rotating. It only has a 3/4 of a bracket that holds its light, but the barn doors look very familiar. I'm just going to put this barn door down in the rim. I'm going to take this, rotate it a bit, lift this up, and I've grabbed right in here in the rim again. I lift it up, get it out of the way, push it down. Open the barn doors. I can rotate it. I'm going to hold a little bit. And so I can pan and tilt it. This, again, is an open face light. But this open lamp, instead of being straight across, is a bulb that comes out. So it's built a little bit differently, but it does pretty much the same thing. Its zoom control is underneath here. This moves the lamp back and forth. You can actually look down here and see it. But as this moves back and forth, that's how it pans and spots. This handle in the back is for handling the light and lifting it, but if you turn it, the light comes apart. That's how you change the lamp, so you have to be kind of careful about that. This doesn't yet have any sort of cable control to hold this on. This has a second tilt. Your tilt's here. This is the mount. This is the mount onto your stand. This is its tilt control, so it has 2 handles on it. It's a little bit different. What's unique about this is that I could put the light upside down. I can get lower with the light, and I can go higher that way with the light. So it's a very interesting design. This is one of the newest designs for a tungsten light, rather than the old Richardson. This lamp actually puts out 1/3 of amount of more lumens for its wattage than the 1,000-watt light does. And it runs cooler. This light, burning-wise with my hands, it tends to dissipate heat a lot better. What I don't have done for these lights, and they don't provide it, is a cable control. So right now, there's no way to control these cables on a little rope or something. So that's why I might have to bring shoestrings with me or place the light cables here on the handles as I'm moving around. I don't want to do it while the light's hot. So this is a little inefficiency, and we're going to be taking care of that in the future by putting maybe a rope around here and being able to tie this down. So for now, what I might do is I'll go ahead and put it on the stand or below the stand so it doesn't trip up anybody. Okay, so that's the 650 watt light. Let's see how fast I can set this stand up. My foot can move under it. I'm ready to go. I'm going to raise it to a height that's good for me to work on. Next light, their version of the 650. They just call it a 650. They don't have a crazy name for it like the Mickey or anything like that, or the Tweenie. So again, this can be mounted down like that if you need to go straight down or from the side. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the side. Make sure that it's going all the way through. That was done a little bit too loose. I never like to have it that many screws out. This has a regular yoke on it, so I can tilt it. The controls for the spot flood are only in one place. This does have a cable control holder. So I'm going to take that and use that right away, put it on its button. Its barn doors, there's the spring that takes the barn door in. I'm going to line that up a little bit with my face. Get that out of the way. Its barn doors, again the flange, line it up. Put the barn door on. It's not working quite right, so that means I might not have it set. Here we go. I open it up to check it. Lock that tilt again. Bring it around. There you go. This is a Chimera or a Chimera. It's a box that opens up with light that I can put in front of my big light to make it a big soft source. In lighting class, you'll deal with that, how to make these big sources. Here is my Scrims for my lights. Make sure I have them all. Make sure these are the right ones for the size. Just gonna, yep. I'm going to show you how to put this one in. So if I was adding a scrim into the light, just move this out of the way, take it, put it in my space, and close it again. Lift this up, close it, ready to go. You want to make sure that you have the right scrims for the right light, because another thing about this company is that they have different scrims for every different light. 650. The only other thing I'm going to show you is it has a 150 watt light. This has a 150 watt light. It's a little bit smaller. You have to make sure you bring your barn door around. It's going to mount on a stand in the same way, or I can put it on a little clamp or holder and be able to move that around. Goes on exactly the same way. Barn doors go on the same way. Has its own little set of scrims. So we already know how to do that. Just when it's put away, I want to make sure that the cables are tightened up a little bit. An interesting thing about this company is they waterproof their switches. These lights are very rugged. They will run in the rain because they send out so much heat that they tend to burn off drops when they go on it. You'd like a light mist is fine. A heavy downpour, you want to protect your light by putting something above it, not something on it, because it gets very heated up. Tungsten lights, 80% of the energy when you turn on this light, 80% of it goes away as heat out the back. Only 20% of it comes out the light area where you want it to do. LED lights, which are made in a different way, are actually the opposite. 80% of its energy comes out as lights. Okay, so that's the tungsten lights and how to do them. Next we're going to do is turn them on and see how the different lights work as far as the beam that they throw out, specular versus diffused, okay?